What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to the Switch Podcast, man. I'm your host, Kewan Humphreys. Y'all see the title, y'all see the thumbnail. We're talking about the Cleveland Cavaliers. One of the biggest surprise through the first week and a half of basketball is that the Cleveland Cavaliers are one of two remaining undefeated teams in the NBA with a 7-0 record. And, you know, when you think about the Cleveland Cavaliers, you knew they were kind of a good team, but for them to start out 7-0, is kind of a shocker. Not kind of a shocker. It is really shocking that they're 7-0. They have a couple good wins. They beat the Milwaukee Bucks last night off of a game winner from Donovan Mitchell. They beat the Lakers a couple of days ago, and they have a road win at the New York Knicks as well. So all their wins are not against, I would say, quote-unquote, bad teams, because it's tough to, I guess, gauge good teams and bad teams only 7 or 8 games in the season. But teams that you would expect to see in the playoffs, they have 4 of those wins because they also beat the Orlando Magic. Yes, it was without Paolo, but a team that you expect to see in the playoffs, the Orlando Magic is one of them. But I want to talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers, man. I think it's really good that they're undefeated for them. You know what I'm saying? Because coming into the season, they had a bunch of question marks about what they were going to look like coming into the season, what they were going to do with specifically Darius Garland, whether they were going to keep him or move on from him and kind of just have Donovan Mitchell be the main guard for this team. But before I get into all that, I want to talk about how this team has played through the first 4 games. And looking at their stats, their stats add up. Their stats add up to them being undefeated. Their second in points per game was 123.7. First in field goal percentage per game at 52.6. Second in three-point percentage per game at 40.6% from the three-point line. And they're also third in total threes made at 104 threes. So you look at this and say, okay, they're scoring a lot of points. They're scoring a lot of points. They're hitting a lot of threes, but they're also playing pretty good defense. They're currently ranked 4th in the NBA in defensive rating. So that means they're a good offense and a good defense. And looking at the roster, I'm just going to talk about the starting lineup right now. Looking at the starting lineup, that sounds about right. But when you look at the Cavaliers, first of all, we got to start at the head of the table. We got to start at the head of the snake. It is Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell, a guy that is I wouldn't say he's a superstar per se, but I'd say he's a star definitely in this league. Last year in the playoffs against the Boston Celtics, he had a big game in the single game that they won against the Boston Celtics. They lost 4-1 in the second round to the Celtics, but he had a big game, and when he got hurt, it was kind of okay. Well, it's over, But I think the biggest thing with Donovan Mitchell is he's kind of just the game. It looks really easy to him right now. He's scoring a lot of points. I think his only inefficient game came last night against the Milwaukee Bucks, where he went 11 for 25 from the field. I hope I'm right, but I think that's what I remember from the stat sheet. But he closed it out with a game winner, man. He came around, lost the ball, picked it back up, and was able to get the shot off and make it with maybe a little under a second or two remaining on the game clock. But along with Donovan Mitchell, beside Donovan Mitchell, is Darius Garland. Now, I alluded to it a little bit earlier in the video, but Darius Garland's story is kind of different. Looking back at when he was drafted 4th overall by the Cleveland Cavaliers. I want to say his second season, he really had a breakout season, made the All-Star game. The Cleveland Cavaliers at one point were third or were top 3 in the Eastern Conference. Then, the age and the inexperience played a factor, and they ended up missing the playoffs. But the very next season after that, the very next season after that, they went and got Donovan Mitchell. And initially when that trade went down, it was like, okay, these guys have a really good backcourt duo, and they also have Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen, who I'm going to get into right after this. So it made you think, okay, they had everything. They got a point guard, they got a dynamic scorer in Donovan Mitchell, and they got the Twin Towers down low. But it didn't really, I would say they were good, yes, but you never got the sense that they were moving the needle. They were never you would think on paper that they would be a contender for, the best team in the East, you know what I'm saying? But they just weren't, and it was kind of odd why that was the case. But looking at them and how they've grown, especially looking through these first 7 games, they could potentially be in that conversation with the Boston Celtics, the New York Knicks, and the Milwaukee Bucks, the Philadelphia 76ers. The Cleveland Cavaliers are in that conversation. And a big part of that is Darius Garland and how he's played so far this season. Like I said earlier, there was question marks as to whether they were going to move on from him because he has a heavy contract. And the way he played last season, especially in the playoffs, was not indicative of that contract. He was not playing the level that he was playing when he earned that contract. But through the first 7 games, he's averaging 17.9 points per game, right beside Donovan Mitchell, who's averaging 24.4. So looking at the vision when you brought these two guys together was that they were going to be this dynamic offensive backcourt. One of the best backcourts in the NBA. That's what you envisioned when you brought them together. And through the first season or two with them together, you haven't seen it. But so far through these 7 games, you're starting to see it. They're averaging 52.3 points per game combined. And that is almost half of your team's points. And that's what you want. That's what you saw when you brought them together and they're playing like that. But the big thing with me is the Twin Towers down low. Jared Allen, we know what he is. We saw him in Brooklyn, little flashes of what he can be in Brooklyn. He came over to Cleveland a couple years ago and has become one of the most underrated best centers in the NBA. We know about his shot blocking, his paint protection. We know about his life above the rim, but he's one of the most efficient players in the NBA, and he does it really well. He's a consistent 15 and 11. A very consistent 15 and 11. And in this league, if you can have a guy that can score 15 points and 11 rebounds and then protect the paint, you've struck gold in the NBA nowadays. And that is exactly what the Cavaliers have in Jared Allen. But my favorite player amongst this whole core is Evan Mobley. Now, I was very high on Evan Mobley when he got drafted out of USC because he had you could just see it. He's a footer. So he's a tall footer that can handle the ball just a little bit, block shots. He's a good rim protector. He's mobile, and he can step out and hit a mid-range or even at sometimes hit a couple threes. Last year in the Boston Celtics series, he played really, really well through majority of that series. This year, he's got his points average up to 17.7 points per game. So he's right there with Darius Garland in terms of his offensive scoring production, not in and not out. And that is exactly what I think brings the Cavaliers over the top. If this guy can turn into a star and really be if he can be that second best guy behind behind Donovan Mitchell, and kind of move Darius to being that point guard that is kind of running the show, but he can get his own bucket, but he's gonna make sure everybody's involved, then this team might be scary. It might be scary because I look at Evan Mobley and everything I just explained about him. What player comes to mind? I know for me, I'm thinking Anthony Davis. And I know Anthony Davis he's a lot different now. The way he's dominating right now is not how Evan Mobley's playing right now. But that is where Evan Mobley should try to get to. If he can get to an Anthony Davis type player, he's got to put a lot more muscle on. But AD did too compared to when he first came in the league. So putting on muscle, continue to tone your game, tweak your game, improve, and he could definitely be one of the best players in the NBA. This is me saying this now. He can be one of the best players in the NBA because he's a defensive player of the year type player. And offensively, he can get his own bucket or he can be spoon-fed. Either way, he can get it done. He can step out, hit a three, hit a jumper. It is just, he's perfect for the Cavaliers. Because if need be, say, if Jared Allen's having an off night, you can slide him down to the 5 and he'll be all right. He'll be fine. But I think him playing the 4 beside J.A. is just, they're the perfect tandem. So you have two really good tandems on the team. You got the backcourt tandem and you got the frontcourt tandem. And you also have Caris LeVert, who is averaging 12 points per game this year, starting at small forward position. You got Dean Wade off the bench. You got Max Strus, who's coming back. I'm not sure if he's played too many games this season, but usually he starts at 3. And his first year last year with the Cavaliers, he played great. Just being that floor spacer for them. When they get him back and add even more shooting to this team, they're going to be an absolute problem. But them being 7-0 this early in the season, it's exciting. I can say it is exciting because the Eastern Conference. The last thing I want for the Eastern Conference, and as an NBA fan, I don't want it to be a 2-man race. I want parity in each conference. I want parity in the league, and the Cleveland Cavaliers being this good this early just shows. It made sure that they started out hot, and maybe they just caught a couple of teams lacking. But it could also show that they're ready to take that step to being one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. They're going to have a rematch with the Milwaukee Bucks tomorrow or today from when y'all seeing this. So we'll see how that game goes. But you know, I wouldn't be surprised if they end up taking that one too and extend and going on to 8-0. But we just got to see what happens the rest of the season. So far, you know, the season's been pretty dope. We have a bunch of teams that you would not expect to have good records, and I'm gonna come on here and talk about a couple of them. Teams that you would not expect to be having such good starts that they're having. But the biggest surprise to me was definitely the Cleveland Cavaliers. But that's all I got for y'all, man. Make sure y'all like, comment, subscribe, share with y'all folks, man. Until next time, we out of here. Yeah.